pray. Amen. So in the last presentation, we looked at Luke 21, Revelation 11, and then Luke 21 verse 26, and we saw that we could apply them. Luke 21 verse 25, distress of nations, is 1840. Revelation 11 verse 18, we marked 1848 from early writings, page 41, and then we're saying verse 26 is going to be between 50 and 63, and the reason we're doing that is because verse 26, men's hearts failing them upon the earth, is because of what they're seeing happening in heaven, and there's a cause and effect relationship. So we put that in place. We looked at the scattering, and we went to early writing 74, 18 MR page 10, and Spaldingham again page 1, and we can see that the second gathering follows the second scattering, and we can mark that in 1850, and the scattering begins in 1844. We can proof text that. We saw that the first gathering was, as Ellen White says, 43 to 44, which from Counselors to Writers and Editors 26 is the first angel's message, and we know the first angel's message comes in 1798, so therefore we're defining the first gathering as 1798 to 1844. If we also wanted to do that a different way, we could go to 1840. And why would we mark 1840 as a gathering? What's being gathered in 1840 that we normally mark? If I say the next bit, you will all know the answer. According to Matthew 25. The virgins begin, they leave their home, they begin to gather together. So we can mark that. And then we've marked the scattering. Then we know that there's another scattering, the third one, and then the third gathering, and we're saying that this is has the characteristics of a triple application. And so then my brother asked, well, how are we going to apply parable of the 10 virgins in this history, 1798 to 1844, history 1, then how would we apply it again? And the reason he's doing that is because there's a tarrying time here. This is early writings, page 55, and I was asking at the end of the class, in this history here, how do we even deal with the parable of the 10 virgins? We spoke about the trimming of the lamps. Trimming of the lamp means to refill your lamp with oil, cut the wick and relight. So I think we all understand that. So I was asking, when does that trimming end? And most of us are saying ends in August. So we just wanted to finish, we just want to tidy that end up. What people are saying, when does the trimming end? They've trimmed the lamps, foolish virgins go, and the wise virgins join the procession. When would we mark the end of that? You said something, Brother Rob?
I was asking where the trimming began. Are you marking it in July or also in August?
So, it depends who you ask, I guess. If you ask the Millerites, they say 25 verse 6 is July. It's midnight, and that's where the cry begins to be made. They recognize Concord and they recognize Exeter, but they don't say there's something special about Exeter in the way we do. So what we've done is we've taken one verse and we've split it into two. So we've taken the point in time, 25:6, and we've made it a period of time, July to August. So I said if we were doing it, we'd probably go for August. They were doing it to go for July. But if it's July or August, whichever answer you want to give, if you wanted to make the trimming began in July, I guess you might be saying, well, it would end in August, if that's the logic that you want to do. Some people who had said August, I presume they meant that they begin trimming in August and it ends in August. It's all August. Or you could argue it would be July and August. Is that why you ask? And what would you say?
I think it ends. The trimming of the lamp is going back to the Bible and looking for the evidence of the coming of Christ. And joining the procession now is when they begin broadcasting this cry as they are approaching October 26th. So I also see it as August. That's where they are trimming the lamp.
Okay. You had your hand up? Sorry?
Same idea.
Okay. Anyone else? Sister Emma? I can't hear you.
Just following on what Brother Robert said, I thought the cry woke us up. Is he saying that it was not true before the cry?
He says, I think he said, July, it's the cry. I'm not making the point. At the end of the class, I said, we need to think like a Millerite. If you want to be literal about that, they would mark the cry as being July. And he's saying they mark it in July, they wake up, they trim till August, and then they go into the procession. And he's defining the procession as giving out the cry. Is that what you said? And you said there's a defect in that logic? Oh, you thought he said something different to that?
I thought he was saying that the cry, it seemed to be that the cry came after they started trimming what else work. But it depends if you make the cry August or July, so you see it is July and July. That's what he was saying too.
July? Did I portray what you said correct? Yeah? Others are saying it's all in August, so you cry, trim, all in August, and then you move on. Any other thoughts?
I don't know, but on that line I'm seeing it on a different perspective, because you have said that the tarrying time was in 1844.
That's a different line of thought. Just go back. The tarrying time is April.
Yeah.
They know that.
On that thought of the tarrying time in 1844, I was thinking then the trimming would be after 1844, because when they are...
Well, yeah, it would be, but we're just dealing with history 1.
Okay.
Just dealing with history 1. Okay, so no one else? I'm going to disagree with that. I'm suggesting that they're trimming their lamps from, if you go with August, I'll go with the August dates, from August all the way to October. So, why would I say that? Sorry?
Because the trimming is confirming this, rereading the Bible, and so I believe they were confirming the evidences all the way up to.
Okay, so they're confirming it all the way up to October.
Because on the 2nd of October, the bride will come on the 2nd of October. And the cry is going to continue until the bride arrives. So, and the cry is trim up your lamp for the bride is coming. So as the cry is being given, that announcing the coming of the bride until the bride comes, they are going to trim the lamp.
Okay, what's the methodology that you're using to defend that position? I don't mean which rule number or anything like that, nothing complicated.
Progressive.
Progressive? Sister Emma?
I was going to say that, and I thought if you've got to put the procession as a separate event in there, you're putting procession at 1844, you're not going there yet.
I'm just trying to understand what a Millerite would have done.
Because I thought they say the shut door is October 22nd, and the virgins come and knock, and that knocking is all these people scoffing afterwards. That's what I had again. That's why I was going to say they trim up to there. And I thought, okay, where's the procession? So I don't know how to defend it. Unless the procession is, there's trimmings through the procession. So they join the procession in August, and that's the loud cry in a sense, because it's swelling with numbers. And then they keep on trimming until they get to the door. Is that what you're saying?
This is when the parable, to me, just kind of like breaks down. Brother Rogers, then Brother Kefis.
Okay. I was thinking that, to me, the way I thought, and I never wanted to say it because I don't have strong evidence, the trimming ends on October 22nd. Then once the trimming is finished, because when they join the procession, now we go to the bridegroom entering his house. So I'm seeing the joining of the procession and entering into the house. They enter into the marriage, and I'm marking that as the marriage supper of the Lamb, which will be the second Advent, 1863.
Okay.
So, if you look at what Sister White comments on that, she says that as the Christ given, the Christ made, there's a procession that is still coming. And a preparation to join that procession is to trim your lambs. So the procession continues up to the 2nd of October 2024 when the bridegroom actually comes. So I'm going to submit that they are giving this cry and calling people to join this procession. So the criteria to join that procession is you have to trim your lambs. So that's why I'm arguing that it's correct to mark the trimming of the lamb up to the 2nd of October.
Okay, so you've changed your position?
No, I have changed from August.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So in October 22nd, 1844, is that where we are marking where they go to get into the house of the bridegroom? What are we marking in October 22nd?
To me, the problem with the Millerites is they almost always only do half a job.
Okay, because like Rogers is arguing, the going into the marriage supper is 1863. So what are we marking in 1844 when you say that the trimming ends in 1844? What are you marking?
So they don't even have an 1863. They have no idea about that. They've only got one message. And what's their message?
Christ is coming back.
Christ is coming, the second Advent. And Matthew 25 verse 1, when I was talking about the methodology, that's repeat and enlarge of Matthew 24. And if we're going to, maybe we haven't proved it robustly, but if we're going to say it's 34, maybe 30, somewhere along those, when it says two classes of people, two classes of worshippers, two classes of first servants, if we're going to overlap that on top of the last part of Matthew 24, which we agreed that we could and we should do. So he's just nudging someone else and it's his own phone. That's what I was laughing. So if we're going to do that, and then we say the two servants is connected to the fig tree parable. If we did that, and the fig tree parable is connected to 1798, if we're okay to do that, so we're going to mark then the kingdom of heaven is 1798. If we're okay with that? So I guess that was my thought process, that if you start looking at Matthew 25, you're going to begin it in 1798. You have these two classes of people, and in 1798 it's the budding forth of the fig tree, which is the harbinger or the sign or the token of what? The second coming. So all of those verses are talking about the second coming. So in Matthew 25, what is the subject if it's then? I would suggest that it's all about the second coming. And when they say, behold, the bridegroom cometh, where's he coming to? I'm suggesting he's coming back down to earth, where the bride lives. And so this cry at midnight is to say, we now know, because we can see Christ coming to the bride's house. In real life, when the cry's made, we know the virgins don't do it, someone else does it on their behalf. We're not addressing that issue. What are they actually crying in real life? I mean, the story, I know the bridegroom cometh, that's what they say in real life, but what is actually going on? If we saw a movie of this, what would we be seeing? We'd see a house. Whose house is that? The bride's house. We've got people outside, 10 of them are asleep, there's someone else outside, and what have they just seen? They've seen the bridegroom in the distance coming, and then they shout out, he's coming. And who are they shouting to? They're shouting to the bride. And where's the bride? In the house. So their job function is to warn the bride so that the bride would be ready when the groom's going to reach her house. So the cry is made as they see the bridegroom approaching. And they're going to do that in August. So how can you see the bridegroom approaching in August? How do you see that? Sorry?
How you will see is that the light, if you have trimmed the lamp, they will be producing light to see. Because the work of the lamp was to look at the bridegroom who is approaching, to alert the bride who is...
I think in real life it's not what you've just said. I think you've made an application, and it's the same application that Brother Robert made. It's through the word. So you see the bridegroom coming only through prophecy. So they're going to make a right application of prophecy because they know he's going to get here on October 22nd. Because on October 22nd, what's going to happen? The second advent. Jesus is going to return. So I'm suggesting, I'm not saying it's right, I'm open to discussion, is that the procession is the return from earth back to the bridegroom's home.
What?
The procession is the trip from earth to heaven.
So it's not the bridegroom coming to the bride's house.
He may have an entourage, but when it says the procession has the bride in that. And the bride isn't in the procession when he's coming to her house, because he's coming to pick her up. So when they join the procession, they're joining the procession on the way back. Alan White's, when you go to Christ Object Lessons or some other places, he's pretty clear on that. In fact, they almost miss it, don't they? If you've read the background, they almost miss the procession going back to his house because they've been talking to the foolish virgins and they've distracted them. So I'm suggesting this is where the model begins to break down, because the Millerites don't go through the whole parable and explain it properly. They're not going to explain what the shut door means, how those foolish virgins are going to literally be knocking on the gates of heaven trying to get in, because we know that can't happen. So they kind of leave the last bit and ignore those verses, and we tend not to do that. And so because we want to put everything in, we see problems. So I'm not suggesting that model is without problems. It has problems with it, but I just want to understand it the way the Millerites did.
I'm still not seeing the reason why you're saying that the trimming goes to October.
Because I'm saying when he arrives at the bride's house, what is or where is the bride's house? And what is the call that the bridegroom's coming? When Miller or Snow say, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh," what do they mean when they say that? They mean second advent, don't they? So when's the earliest time that you are going to give that cry? August? I'm suggesting you can go earlier than that, a lot earlier. The first time you can give the cry that the bridegroom's coming. Because August is called Not called the Midnight Cry. What's Snow calling it in his magazine? The true Midnight Cry. So why would they say that? Because there was a midnight cry before. So when's the earliest they're going to say, behold the bridegroom cometh, even if they're not using that language?
1818.
Sorry? I would suggest 1840. It's once they get the second witness, they've got the proof now, because before it's just a theory. Once they have that proof that he's coming, that's when the cry goes. And when that cry goes, where does it go to? 1 foot upon the land and 1 on sea. It goes worldwide. That's the cry. The cry goes everywhere that Jesus is about to return in 4 years' time. Everyone knows that. Not 4 years, 3 years. We'll go with 3 years. You get to April and he hasn't come. They realise their mistake after they wake up, and then they give the same cry again, if we're okay with that. So they give the same cry twice. You can make an application of that, can't you? Because 1840 is 9/11, and they begin to make the cry in July, which is 2014. So in 9/11, what are we crying? What's this movement crying? Is everybody keeping up if I jump and make application? Yeah? What's our message? Our message is not the second advent. What's our message? Probation's about to close, or Sunday law, third angel's message. If we go with Sunday law, what are we saying at 9/11? Behold, the Sunday law is coming. And now in 2014, if we're prepared to do July and August and kind of squish them together, because we don't have that much visibility in 2014, what are we saying in July and August, which would be 2014, 2018, behold what's coming? Raphael's coming. See how we've changed and refined and clarified things. So we would say the true midnight cry for us is Raphael. 9/11, we didn't even know about Raphael. So we begin to see that, not that 9/11 was a mistake, because 9/11 is a clear waymark to say Christ is about to return. 1840 wasn't a mistake, but they had problems in that message, because they're saying he's coming back in 43. 43 comes and goes, and now they're saying, no, okay, he's coming back in 44. And they're going to say that in July, August. And how do they know he's coming back? To the study of his word. So that's the argument. I'm saying that they're trimming their lamps all the way to October, because they're not even expecting him to arrive at her house until October. If that's okay. We're turning those verses, that singular point, into a period of time. Because we'd say there's a cry made, and I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, he's going to get to her house, which ends up being an extended period of time, because that cry has to go to many people.
So in the literal story, they needed the light to help them on their way back.
Yes.
Not to go to the brides.
No. I'm not saying there aren't any lights coming. They may or may not be. But there's a rule. They say the rule is, if you don't have a lamp, you can't join the procession. Because otherwise the foolish virgins could have said, we'll just join along. We'll just join the procession without our lamps. But you're not allowed to. Everyone has to follow the rules.
Just have a question. I think it was not just mentioned, but Robert has also mentioned that they are getting into the marriage in 1863. Are we in agreement with
the getting into the marriage in 1863. I think I'm going to just say yes, I think. Okay?
Because if you look at in regard to the parable, the marriage.
Let me stop. Okay, I don't think that the issue of the marriage is that straightforward. So when you say the marriage, I think Brother Roger said this. So let me not ask him, but let me tell you what I think happened. October 1844, Jesus basically goes to the marriage. He gets married to his bride in 44, and that marriage, which is one day, which we could call the Day of Atonement, takes you all the way to close of probation. And at the close of probation, he's married. And when he's married, then he comes back and picks us up, and we go to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Is that how you understand it? It's a bit dangerous talking about an important subject like that in a class of this size, because I didn't want to go down that road. It was kind of just like a throwaway statement without defending it and proving it. So I don't mind people giving their comment, but if you're taking notes, it may or may not be true what people are saying. Even what I'm saying may or may not be true. I'm suggesting that the marriage begins in 44. He says, wait here, I'm getting married. When I am married, I'll come and pick you up. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, that's how I understand it. But when you look at it,
I didn't hear last week. When you look at it,
at a different angle, because when you look at it specifically, the Mennonite history,
whatever scale you go to, fractal, it always work out the same.
Yeah. So what I'm not harmonizing in my mind, though I understand and I agree that when you go to say that it goes into the marriage, and that marriage takes place and it goes to probation, it becomes part of the marriage. And that's even how society portrays it in the privacy. But now when we are going to make an application of it, like in another history, according to the parable, 22nd October is when, according to our understanding, the marriage enter into the marriage supper of the Lamb. Not 1864.
So I agree with that, but I think there's a lot of things that are wrong in their version of events that we have to be careful we don't turn into facts.
Okay. First of all, when you're taking that model, so just like you've identified, what you're trying to identify.
Speak a bit louder, he can't hear.
What you are trying to identify is some of the incorrect facts that they had. But I'm understanding the explanation you have given. Even if you took it to that history, you'll see that on April they are married, which takes until October when they go into the marriage supper of the Lamb. Because I think there is a verse that if October is the tarrying time and we apply that to April, it says like the bride is ready at the tarrying time to be married on the 6th day. If you apply to the history to be April 19th, they're already married, then they go into the marriage supper in October 22nd. But we know obviously there's some incorrect things in that history.
Okay, so let's back out of all of that. All I want to say is on that point is that for me the parable of the 10 virgins isn't that easy to understand. There's things in the Millerite history that don't quite match up with the parable. And I think it needs a lot more work doing to it. Okay, so we've seen triple application. We've seen those 3 verses. let's go back to where we were yesterday. The gift of prophecy in the lines. So we had how many lines? 4 lines, I think. We had Moses, Christ, the Millerites, and Ezra. We left the one Ezra. So we had 4 lines, and in each one, we're not arguing about what the definition of a true prophet is, but what we saw was the prophets had 2 different experiences, if I can say it that way. One was just studying the Word of God, being led by the Holy Spirit, and another one was direct communication with God. He speaks to you, and you have a direct message from Him. So you would be saying, like, "Thus saith the Lord," because He told me directly. So if we've done the lines one, the question is, when is it going to be restored? When is the gift of prophecy going to be restored? So someone had the passage. Let's go to that passage where we're picking up that the gifts are going to be restored. I think someone said it's either patriarchs and prophets or prophets and kings, one of the 2.
Job.
Sorry?
Lamalinda message 33, paragraph 8.
Say that again?
Lamalinda message.
Oh, it's not there. I made a mistake. What's the coding for that? LM. LLM. 33.8. As the 3rd angels, is that it? Yes? As the 3rd angel's message, yeah? Okay. Okay, so this is an original source. It's not anywhere else, as far as I can see. As the 3rd angel's message arose in the world, which is to reveal the law of God to the church in its fullness and power, the prophetic gift was also immediately restored. This gift acted a very prominent part in the development and carrying forward of this message. Okay, so is that the only passage we have about restoration of the gifts, or do we have any others?
Does this say that the gift of prophecy is going to be restored?
No, it's not. That's why I'm asking if this is the one that when we. The reason I'm asking is when all those studies were done about the restoration of the gifts, I wasn't part of those studies, and they were some time ago, and I don't recall all the passages that were used to defend that. Hence my question: is this the only one where it talks about restoration of the gifts?
There is one which
Because I thought there was another one. That's why I'm asking. PP 27, 23, 2 and 3. So we'll read that one, and then you can make your comment. PP 27. PP 27? I can't find a PP 27.
I think it's in the introduction where she speaks of spiritual gifts.
Okay. So if it's PP 27, then that must mean it's not a spirit of prophecy quote, I presume. Okay, so that's why I couldn't find it. It's not a spirit of prophecy quote. Where do we begin? Among? Is that where you want to pick up from? Oh, you want to begin from Revelation 12? I'm going to go to the paragraph before because it mentions gifts. Among the agencies which the apostle in his letters to both the Corinthians and Ephesians enumerates as gifts set in the church, we find pastors, teachers, helps and governments, and all these are acknowledged on every hand as still continuing in the church. Why not then the others also, including faith, healing, prophecy, etc.? Who is competent to draw the line and to say what gifts have been set out of the church when all were in the beginning equally set therein? So set out and set therein means taken away and given, I think. Revelation 12:17 has been referred to as a prophecy that the gifts would be restored in the last days. An examination of its testimony will confirm this view. The text speaks of the remnant of the woman's seed, the woman being a symbol of the church. Her seed would be the individual members composing the church at any one time, and the remnant of her seed would be the last generation of Christians or those living on the earth at the second coming of Christ. The text further declares that these keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. And the testimony of Jesus is explained in chapter 19 to be the spirit of prophecy, which must be understood as that which among the gifts is called the gift of prophecy, 1 Corinthians 12. The setting of the gifts in the church does not imply that every individual is to have them. So, okay, so I'll leave it there. I just want to actually make one point, because I'm going to forget this otherwise. When we were in Spalding and McGann here, if you remember the Spalding and McGann study we did this morning, and we went through that, and the reason we went through that is to define the shaking and the gathering. Remember we read, it said, I saw that God had stretched out his hand the second time to recover the remnant of his people. Second time means what? Twice. So she says, that God stretched his hand twice to do what? Recover whom? How many remnants are there? If I did something twice to the remnant, how many remnants would there be? Two remnants? So who's the first remnant?
Sardis.
And the second remnant? So if it was that, then would she not have said he recovered one remnant one time, and now he's going to, this would be the first recovering of the remnant, wouldn't it? Not the second recovering of the remnant. If you're going to make it two separate remnants. Sorry?
There are two separate remnants. There are two separate remnants. That's based on that text.
There is not, or there is?
There is two separate remnants.
Okay? So if there's two separate remnants, then you would have only recovered the remnant the first time. It wouldn't be the second recovering, it would only be the first recovering. She would only have recovered once per remnant. Yes. It seems to me the way this sentence says is that the remnant received something twice. Paul would say something, this is the second time I'm telling you. I don't know what passage that is. Sorry? 2 Corinthians, I think, yeah. So he says, this is the second time I'm doing something. I think second time I'm communicating with you.
I'm coming to you.
Read that.
2 Corinthians 13:1.
2 Corinthians 13:1.
This is the third time I am coming to you.
Oh, the third time. Oh, okay. That works just as well. But if you're doing something for the third time, you have to be doing it to the same person. So I'm saying it's to the same one here, that he stretched out his hand the second time for the remnant. He did it once for them, and now he's going to do it a second time for them. So I'm suggesting it's only one remnant that's going to be saved twice. If that's the case, and we've already laid out our structure, this is how I think we normally apply Revelation 12:17. Where do we mark the remnant? Just on this passage. Sorry? I didn't hear it.
I'm saying, let us where we mark the remnant of SPM 1.
Yes, Spalding again. Where do you mark the remnant beginning? According to this passage that we just read. And this is the structure that we've created from that passage. My brother? Either one of you? Where do you mark the beginning of the remnant? Where is the remnant created according to Spalding and McGann? 1798?
But you have seen there are two remnants.
Some people thought there were two remnants. You think there's two remnants? I'm using 2 Corinthians 13 to say that there's only one Corinthian church, and Paul writes to them 3 times. This is the 3rd time. So I'm saying God's going to recover the remnant twice. If we could do the grammar bit and say it's the definite article, the remnant, singular.
But rather than 2 times, but the same remnant.
That's what I'm suggesting.
So from here I see 2 gatherings.
Okay, so my question is, when does the remnant begin?
Beginning 1798.
1798. That's what.
1798.
Yeah. So we all agree 1798. When we go to Revelation 12:17, we use the 1260 to argue that the remnant begins in 1798. I think that's what we would normally do. These people, these commentators, have done it slightly differently, which I think sometimes in a movement we would probably do, because we end up arguing that the church is not doing what? Keeping the commandments properly, and they're not keeping the testimony of Jesus, spirit of prophecy, but we are at the end of the world. So I think that's the argument they're using. We'll read that again. Revelation 12:17 has been referred to as a prophecy that the gifts would be restored in the last days. An examination of its testimony, I think examination of the verse, will confirm this view. The text speaks of the remnant of the woman's seed. The woman being a symbol of the church, her seed would be the individual members composing the church at any one time. Do we agree with that? That the seed is what? Individual members. And the remnant of her seed would be the last generation of Christians, or those living on the earth at the second coming of Christ. The text further declares that these keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus, and that's the spirit of prophecy. So how are they using that passage? Seems to me that they're saying 12:17 is talking about the final generation, and they're saying that's the correct way to read it. And I guess I would argue that I'm not sure that it is the correct way to read it. Depending on what we're going to define generation as, of course. If you define generation in this way, then I think I would agree it needs to be option 3. If they're going to define generation as someone who sees the beginning and never dies, it would be either number 2 or number 1. In which case, it couldn't be number 1, because number 1 never see Christ coming back, so it would be number 2. So they're going to say this generation is this extreme view, or the remnant is the extreme view that we normally hold. But normally I think Adventists take this position. Are you okay with that? So what is this passage saying, if we're going to use this to talk about the restoration of the gifts? What's that? What is all of that saying? Let me ask another question before that one. We've read what this person says. How do you read that passage? Option 1, 2 or 3? How do you read 12:17, Brother William?
Option 3.
Option 3. Brother Wilson? 3. Brother Andrew? 2. Why 3? Now, let me ask you a different question. Why not 2? Why would 2 give you the wrong answer?
I'm confused.
Oh, you're confused. Okay, let's get the confusion. 12:17. You know the verse reasonably well. It says the remnant of the seed. I want to know who the remnant are. Is the remnant 1, 2 or 3? What do we call 1? We've got it here, the Millerites. Number 2 is 144,000. Number 3 is Adventism. Who is the remnant? That's what I'm asking. Brother Wilson says the remnant in this verse is Adventism from 1798 all the way to the end of the world. Brother Andrew's saying it's not. The remnant is the 144,000, 1989 to the end of the world. We're using the word remnant interchangeably with this generation because we got this generation from Matthew 24 and we're getting the remnant from Revelation 12. So tell us why it can't be number 2.
According to me, I think is because based upon that quotation that I've read in the book of PP, there's a phrase that's going to say that the remnant of our sin will be the last generation of Christians. And we've been laboring to understand what is this generation, and we identify that this generation is from 1798 to the second coming.
Okay? That's your argument. Do you agree with that, Brother Andrew? You change your position?
A moment.
Sorry?
A moment, I'll get back.
Yeah, but I asked you, have you changed your position? Has he persuaded you?
No, I'm still digesting it.
Oh, so you might be changing your position.
I want to weigh his argument with mine.
Okay, so I'm saying it's not been enough to convince you.
Yeah.
So it's not a strong argument. You say, okay, I lost. So it's not that good an argument for you, my brother.
I'll go for Andrew's answer.
Brother Andrew's answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us why Brother Wilson's wrong then.
If we see number 3, this is the imagery that is in Matthew.
This is what?
Is the imagery that is given in Matthew.
Okay, yeah.
But if we see in the second is telling us the history of the final generation, and this final generation where the gift is going to be restored. And I'm saying this final generation is 144,000.
Okay, so in the mind of this writer, in the mind of the writer, who's he talking about, my brother? Who's he talking about?
Okay, he's talking about the restoration of the prophetic gift to Ellen G. White.
So he's talking about Ellen White, and according to your reading of it, who's he talking about?
I haven't read that one, but I was reading different quotation.
Sorry?
I haven't read that one. I think I haven't read PP, but LMM is talking about the restoration of the gift to Ellen White. But the quotation that I'm reading here is talking about the final generation.
So when that author wrote that, he means there's going to be a person that's raised up, or persons, at the very end of the world who are going to have the gift of prophecy. So he's not talking about Ellen White.
No, it's the first quotation.
I'm talking about PP 27. That's what I'm talking about. Who else wants to comment?
Yeah, I would argue and go with number 3, because I see that the dragon is wrote with the woman. And first I will understand why is the dragon wrote with the woman. It's because he tried to persecute the woman, but the woman fled from her. He was unable to do it. And so he says that because I'm unable to persecute this one, I'm going to deal with her children. And you can see by 1798 is when persecution begins. Persecution ends. From 1773 around there, persecution has already ended. And so those who keep the commandments and the testimony of Jesus, for me they are Adventists, because at that period God, from 1844, is going to remind us that there is a commandment we have not been keeping. So by 1844 we are keeping the whole law of God. And still, here is where God is going to restore the spirit of prophecy to Ellen White, where we see now we have the testimony. And that generation now had been going for, we have the commandments and we have the testimony. So the devil is wrong with the woman, but he starts now planning to persecute these who have the testimony and the commandment, which are the Adventists.
Have you read that, my brother?
I'm reading.
Not finished?
Not finished. Yeah, I'm going with number 2. So to me, I think because the reason why I'm not taking number 3 is because the dragon was wrath with a woman and went to make war with the remnant of our seed. So to me, I think not all the Adventists will be persecuted. So
let me stop you. I understand your logic, but someone gave this as a proof text. Yeah. So I'm asking, what did he mean?
Okay. So in the mind of the author of that book was referring to Sister White, but prophets speak less for their time, and God declares the end from the beginning. So it was declaring what was going to happen at the end of Adventism. And at the end of Adventism, we are seeing 144. But at the beginning, Adventism has never been persecuted.
I would disagree. I think they've been persecuted. But that aside, if we're going to say restoration of the gifts, this one is not a primary source. First of all, it's not even inspired, and even then he means Ellen White, you agreed. And LLM, we read that casually, but someone's already observed that's talking about Ellen White as well. So neither of these are talking about sometime in the future there's going to be a restoration of the gifts.
Yeah, I have read it, but in this quotation, what I'm saying that the last generation is the number 3.
Number 3, okay.
When I see this quotation, it's number 2.
Number 2.
Because he quoted Revelation 12:17, which I see maybe we are not understanding, or maybe I've understood it wrongly. To me, I see 3 things. I see the woman, I see the seed, and I see the remnant of the seed.
All of us see that. A woman, a seed, and the remnant of the seed. Carry on.
So I don't know. Okay, you correct me. To me, I see the woman was in the group of 60 days, and then her seed was from 1798 to 1844. Then the remnant of that seed, which is supposed to be from 1899 to the second coming. 1989 to the second coming. I don't know if
okay.
Because I also depend on the certain parable in Matthew 21 to 1 to 16 about.
So, what did he mean though? Did he mean what you just said?
No, he was applying it to specifically to Ellen White.
Okay, so that means you're telling me he's reading the verse wrong. Yeah?
It's me making an application. I'm putting it in my thoughts. But
who's making the application?
He was applying it to Ellen White.
I want to know what the original means. The way he says it, it's obvious. 12:17 means this. An examination of its testimony will confirm this view. The text speaks of the remnant. He's telling you original definition. You're saying you agree with his original definition or you disagree with it, and you're making an application. Have a think, Brother Rogers.
Okay, I think when we're looking at this quotation, one thing as we have been going through the classes, the Lord has been trying to teach us how to read inspiration in the Bible. So I believe when we're asking the question, we are asking for the original intent of this writer. The original intent is referring to history 3.
So my other question next then, is he correct? Because my brother said he's wrong. He said he's reading 12:17 incorrectly. He says the woman is the 1260 here. This is the seed, and the remnant is over here, I guess, sometime afterwards. 3 separate groups.
So, not understanding which reason is he saying that the seed is in 1788, because the woman and the seed, she has just given birth. I'm seeing the beginning of 60, the woman and the seed there.
Tell us what the seed is, so make it simple for us. Seed equals, what is seed?
Christ Christian Church.
Christ. The Christian Church or Christ?
Okay, the woman gives birth. Whatever she gives birth to is a seed.
Okay, so let's start with that. A seed equals whatever you're giving birth to. Is that what you're saying? Yeah? Don't know if that was funny, but where do we first pick that up? Genesis, isn't it? So pick up in Genesis. There's your seed and his seed. Either way it goes, his or her. And that seed is whom? They think it's
Jesus.
No, they think it's
Cain. And then they realise it's Seth. And all the way through, everyone knows that the seed is the grandchildren or the family tree of Eve. Until Paul comes and says what? He changes it all. I don't know, 4,000 years of history, and says, by the way, let me remind you that the seed doesn't mean you're not the seed. The seed was Christ. And there's some tricky thing by saying, I'll prove it by what? How does he prove it's Christ?
It says that it doesn't say of many, but of one.
So that's grammar. So he's going to use a grammar argument. I find that really crazy in my opinion. He uses a grammar argument to say, if he meant lots of you, it would have said, and her seeds. But because he said seed, singular, it must be one person, Christ. I honestly don't think that's a good argument, to be honest. Not grammatical anyway, because seed, it could be many. So besides that, he's a prophet and he can say what he wants, we accept that. So that's how you can show. And I think does it say the seed in Revelation 17? It doesn't. It just says gave birth. Sorry? No, not the last part. He went to the birth of the child at the beginning of the chapter. There it just says child, man-child. I don't think it says seed. But we can go to Paul, and Paul says the seed of the woman, the seed of Eve, is Christ. Therefore you can apply it to Revelation 12. And it's also all of her children, which is everybody. It's the church. So you said Christ and the church, yeah? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So we know it's the church because how many churches have there been? One church from the very beginning. The church has been a collection or a body of true believers. So it's a simple definition. So let's go back into 12:17. It said, went to make war with the remnant of her seed. What does that mean?
So I was saying, Opio was making the point that...
You read it for us. Tell us what the remnant of her seed means.
You want me to say remnant of her seed?
Is that how? No, you read the Bible. You read what it says literally, and then tell me what it means. Because have I misquoted it? I thought it said remnant of her seed.
Okay, so she gives birth to the seed, and then they are chased. They are chased and they flee through the 1260, and then it's when we get to the 1260 that we are going to have the remnant of her seed. So the remnant of her seed is what has remained after the persecution that has been going on during the 1260. So I'm not seeing the seed as being in 1788. I'm seeing the remnant of her seed being there in 1788 after the 1260.
Tell me where to put seed.
Where to put
seed?
The beginning, even the beginning of the 1260.
Okay, so you want to put seed in Genesis, saying the seed's been all the way there, and then in 538 you see the woman, she gives birth to a seed, the seed escapes, she escapes, because she goes into the wilderness, he goes to heaven, and at the end of that you see the remnant or the leftover of her seed. So to say that simply, if I understand what you're saying, is that seed is church, and all the verses saying what's left of the church, the remnant, what's left over. And if you're going to do that, what is the church in the 1260? Not the name of it, it's the woman, isn't it? The woman is the church. So the seed is, according to what he said, he says the seed is the woman, isn't it? Isn't he saying? Are you saying that the seed is the woman is the church, the seed is the church?
I think that is what I'm saying.
The seed you have to take all from the beginning, but you take the church, the woman is there before 538. In fact, the woman's where? At least 4 BC, in 12. In 12:1 she's there in 4 BC, 500 years before she flees into the wilderness. So she's there, and she's the church, and the seed is the church, the body of believers. So Brother Robert's saying that the seed equals the woman, and in 1798 the dragon is going to attack what's left over. And what is left over? It's the remnant, or what's left over after Sardis has been and gone. And we would argue it's Laodicea, wouldn't we? Could argue it's Philadelphia if you wanted to.
Okay, maybe the woman we can mark when, for example, verse 15 and 16 there says that, and the serpent cast out his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So the flood we can mark it is during the 12th period of the 1260. Verse 16, and the earth helped the woman. So the earth is United States of America.
You think?
Okay, that's how I did.
Okay.
And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Verse 17. So that is verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. What is that? So there, verse 17, it gives us from 1989.
I don't know how you did that. How did you get 1989 out of all of that?
Because the woman now, you see, if we take now the development of the Adventist church was developed in United States of America, where the church was developed. Now, the remnant, where can we mark now the remnant of our seed? So this is the church now which has scattered. It is all over the world. And now the dragon is fighting the remnant.
I don't understand where you get that logic. Do you agree the woman is the seed?
The woman is the seed.
Because if I pick from verse 15, it gives me...
You didn't answer my question. Do you agree? What's the woman?
The woman is the church.
And what's the seed? Well, okay, so I'll corner you then. I'll say, give me the rule of first usage.
The first rule of the usage of the seed.
Yeah.
From the beginning when he gives the birth. From Genesis.
Okay, so tell me what the seed means then.
Okay, the seed from the meat is Christ.
I think Paul is saying it's Christ. Do you see Cain and Abel fighting? So that's not a fulfillment of that passage in Genesis. So it can't be Christ then. Abel must be the seed. Who's the seed of the serpent? No, you want to make the seed of the woman Christ. So you've got Christ there. Who's the equivalent of Christ? You've got to have an equivalent of Christ. Cain does not fight against Christ. It would be an unfair fight. I understand that. The reason I said that was because if you want to make the seed Christ, then you have to tell me who the seed of the serpent is. And you can't make it Satan, because Satan is the serpent. So who would his seed be? It can't just be a normal human being if you're going to make it Christ. If Christ is the Saviour, which you're going to say is the seed, he's the real proper definition of the seed, then you've got to come up with a real proper definition of what Satan's seed is. It's got to be some superhuman, really great person that's going to destroy all of us. And I don't think you have one. So Paul, you know, he's making an application. Can't be the original intent.
So what I've done in these verses, it is the application. What I've done is application.
Yes.
Yes. So from that is verse 15, 16 and 17.
15 and 16 is the Dark Ages. Yes. We know that. After the Dark Ages finishes, you get the leftover. What word is leftover? If I'm going to change remnant to leftover, what should that remind us? That which remains. What's that? That's Sardis. And we know Sardis is 1798. I think we'd be really struggling to make this 1989 on number 2. So this is number 3. I thought that was only going to take a couple of minutes, but it took a bit longer, which is okay. All I wanted to do was to go to Spalding and McGann and show that there's only one remnant. And if we go with the idea that there's only one remnant ever, you know it has to be 1798 in verse 17. It has to be that one, because there aren't 2 remnants. Okay, so you've given me 2 passages, and none of them are primary applications of that the gifts are going to be restored. So is there another one? I thought there was another one.
Can you see Prophets and Kings 6:17? I'm not sure.
PK
6:78. Paragraph 2. Not sure.
I went into this study because I thought we had some good text on this. Hopefully we've got to find something, because I'm getting nervous now where we haven't invented this thing from. I thought there was going to be some letter or something, and Ellen White says, this church is in apostasy, and when we come back onto our knees and we pray to God and we get our act straight, He's going to respond and we're going to have the restoration of the gifts. That's what I was expecting. I'm not telling you off, I'm just saying that I thought that's what we'd find. Maybe that is correct, but maybe amongst us we don't know what that passage is. Maybe we weren't there when they did those studies. Okay, paragraph 2. In the time of the end, every divine institution is to be restored. The breach made in the law at the time the Sabbath was changed by man is to be repaired. God's remnant people standing before the world as reformers are to show that the law of God is the foundation of all enduring reform, and that the Sabbath of the 4th commandment is to stand as a memorial of creation. Constant reminder of the power of God. In clear, distinct lines, they are to present the necessity of obedience to the precepts of the Decalogue. Constrained by the love of Christ, they are to cooperate with Him in building up the waste places. They are to be repairers of the breach, restorers of the paths to dwell in. See verse 12.
677, paragraph 2.
Oh, did I read the wrong one?
677.
You want me to read 677, paragraph 2. The spiritual restoration of which the work carried forward in Nehemiah's day was a symbol is outlined in the words of Isaiah. They shall build the old waste places, they shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities. They that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places, thou shalt raise up the foundation of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in. The next one? 677, paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 didn't say anything. What did that say?
Signature restoration.
That to me just sounds like the history that we're dealing with. Millerite history, October 1844. The remnant of Israel were a feeble people exposed to the ravages of their enemies, but through them God purposed to preserve the earth a knowledge of Himself and His law. They were the guardians of the true worship, the keepers of the holy oracles. I don't think that says anything. In the time of the end, every divine institution is to be restored. The breach. What is every divine institution? Sorry?
That's what I'm thinking. That's why I said I'm not sure.
What are the institutions of God?
Marriage and Sabbath.
It seems to me it's talking about marriage and Sabbath when it says divine institutions. In the time of the end, every divine institution is to be restored. The breach made in the law. So everything about the law is going to be restored, it seems to me. Maybe we could argue there are more breaches than just marriage. We focus on marriage and the fourth and the fifth. Maybe that's what we focus on, but maybe that's not the only one. Brother Cephas.
In my understanding, I've never come across good verses the way directly mentioned when the gift of prophecy is going to be restored. But there are lines of truth that we can show from the Bible when. An example is the line of Samuel.
Of?
Samuel.
Solomon.
Yes.
Samuel. Oh, Samuel, sorry.
Yeah. Like, if you go to the line of Samuel, the calling of Samuel, in chapter 3, I'm not going to read it, but it brings to view first the apostasy of Eli, that his children did so many things, but they refrained the throne, and he kind of suffered the apostasy to continue. Therefore, the Lord is going to say that He's going to reject Eli, but He's going to come up with a new priesthood, sacred priesthood. When you look at Samuel, Samuel, after that Samuel is going to be called 4 times. And when he is called in 1 Samuel chapter 3, the Samuel in the verses where it says that all Israel saw that Samuel was a prophet from Dan to Beersheba. And when you go into the Word of God and run that phrase Dan to Beersheba, it shows it's a symbol of what takes place from the midnight cry to the sun when you're looking at the line of. So I'm submitting that one of the lines that we can use to show when the gift of prophecy is going to be restored is the line of Samuel. But I have never come across, probably there might be, but I have never come across a quote.
Okay, Sister Emma?
Yeah, I'm just looking at divine institutions. She only uses it 22 places, and she said it's the Sabbath, it's marriage, it's the family, and it's the entire system of Judaism, because that's an ethical law. The root of it seems to be it's all legal.
Sabbath.
Sorry? She said Sabbath, marriage, and family.
And the entire system of Judaism.
So,
I think I agree with us about the lines, because we have other lines using the fire scheme.
yeah, I didn't want to use lines yet. We're going to the lines, but the problem with lines is we might have made a mistake in the lines. That's why we want to know when is it going to happen. So the question is it even going to happen? And if we're just going to use lines to say that it's going to happen, I'm not saying it's not good, but I had assumed that we had a reference point, a hard quote that said something.
I think we had a quote. I'm not sure whether it's the one who just has read, but there was a quote which was saying that at the end of time, God's covenant with his people is going to be restored or something of the sort. And that's why we began picking this point that perhaps one of the things that is going to be restored is the gift of prophecy. Because we went and there's a way we were saying that if either you were saying the covenant or the institution or the gift, and we will now go to Paul and look at the gifts that the church has been given, and one of them was the gift of prophecy, which presently we do not have. We have the gift of prophecy in writing, but we don't have it alive in the church. So you are saying that that is going to be restored. So I'm not sure whether you are directly saying this is the gift of prophecy, but I think it was something to do with the gifts being restored.
But you're piggybacking that onto covenant.
Yeah, I think it's that quote that we are using.
Okay. Quick questions because we're running out of time.
I think let us read CET. Page 242.
So you read that quickly.
Saying, but the scriptures, while foretelling the dreadful apostasy, also plainly teach that just before the second coming of Christ, many will be rescued from darkness of error and substitution. One more, the earth is to be enlightened by the glory of God. The pure truths of the Bible are to shine forth. And in this time of the heavenly illumination, making the approaching aims of the age, the gift of the Spirit are again to be manifested in the true church.
Okay, so we'll have a read of that one. We'll do that out of class.
Yeah, I wanted to say something concerning the lines, because we are looking for the firm quotation to prove that the gift of spirit of prophecy will be restored. But there are so many things that the line brings in, which we do not have a clear quotation, like the issue of public evangelism. We don't have a spirit of prophecy quotation for it, but the lines has brought it forth.
I'm happy if we don't have a quote. I'm not saying we have to have one. I just thought that there was one in all of those studies that were done, because we seemed really confident about it. So if we can't find any, then we can't find any. That's fine. Then to work out when it's going to be restored, first of all we have to prove that it is going to be restored, and then we'd find out when based upon that particular story. So see if you can find something in your personal studies, and if we can't, then we'll start looking at the lines tomorrow. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask and pray that you would guide and direct us in the study of your word. Lord, as we try to review material that you have given to us over the months and years, as we perhaps look at these things for the first time, help us to look with a critical eye, to be careful about what we're reading, so that when we accept these truths, we know to the best of our ability that these things are so. Be with us, guide us and bless us to this end in Jesus' name. Amen.